so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Hoosier Huddle Podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is T.J. Inman, and we're wrapping up our spring practice previews here with the third final one with defense. We'll talk a little bit about special teams as well, but the defensive preview, just like we did with the offense, we'll go through position by position, give you the key player there, some key losses on defense as well, and then maybe a player who surprises and steps up and key newcomers from the portal. There are a lot of them, TJ. So welcome in. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Yeah, it's been fun talking about the offense. Now we'll switch over to defense, a unit that I think for the most part was a bit overshadowed last season. Just, people like offense and hadn't had it for a long time at IU, and it was just refreshing to see an offense you could count on. But the defense was equally great. I mean, fantastic against the run all season long. Yes, gave up the one big run to Notre Dame. Other than that, they were really good against the run against Notre Dame, too. You return an All-American at every level of the defense, something that I haven't looked into this. I should have, but I don't believe any other program can make a claim to that this coming season. I don't think that that's the case. So that's something that I'll look into and include it in an article if so. But, you return Mikael Kamara on the line, Aiden Fisher at linebacker, D'Angelo Pons in the secondary. So leaders on the field at every single level of the defense. A lot of transfers came in the secondary. A lot of transfers came in on the defensive line. But linebacker, the only position group that had 0 transfer additions on the whole roster. So an
So
intent
far.
or so far, yeah, a signal that either the coaches feel really good about, who they have there, or they just didn't necessarily love anybody that was in the regular portal window and they're waiting until the spring portal to pick up somebody else. But it's a really, really good group. And I guess we'll start up front with the defensive line.
Yeah, defensive line for me is key. You lose C.J. West, who's going to make himself a lot of money in the NFL based on how he tested at the combine, and then how he practiced at the Shrine Bowl as well. He's going to be a big guy to replace. His stats didn't jump off the page, but you could see the impact he had on the field. Blowing up plays. He got thrown out of the UCLA game for a terrible, terrible call, targeting call, trying to recover a fumble, but he clearly impacted the game. You bring in Hosea Wheeler from Western Kentucky, who was their best interior defensive lineman. He's all was at CUSA now,
Yes.
All-Conference USA player. When he played against Power 4 competition, they played Alabama. He looked good. Now, it wasn't the Alabama of 5 years ago, but anytime you could look good against Alabama, it's good. He's going to step in. You bring in
Dominic Ratcliffe.
I want to call him Daniel Radcliffe, but that's Harry Potter.
Yeah. Well,
Dominic, look, if Harry Potter
They're
could
still
play
the
on the
spring.
defensive line, you could sprinkle some magic in there.
I think Hagrid might be the better choice.
Yeah, I think he would start at guard on the offensive line.
Yeah. They're still the spring. Who knows?
Yeah. And you bring in Radcliffe from Texas State, who is also, again, all Sun Belt. type player, and you hope you bring that group. You have Marcus Burris back for another year. Tyreek Tucker had
Yeah,
a solid year in
yeah,
reserve last year. He's a guy who could play more snaps. And then, Mario Landino kind of surprised last year as a guy who came in as a true freshman and was a major, I would call as a true freshman, a major contributor. He was a contributor in a big way and
yeah.
got enough trust to be in the rotation.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's if you could replace CJ West with Ratcliffe and or Wheeler, the and look, this defensive line staff is there's no reason not to trust that they'll get the best out of the players that they do have.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with Mikael Kamara. He talked after the season about moving around some more, um, playing maybe more on the other side of the line, maybe dropping back a little bit. Um, Basically, I think that what he would like and probably what, it took to sell him on coming back for another year was prep for the NFL, and show the NFL some additional skills other than just, hand down pass rusher. Um, so that's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him. One guy that you did not mention that I think the staff feels like is ready to make an impact of some sort is Daniel Ndukwe.
Yep.
Uh, Very athletic. He showed it on special teams. Um, I think that he's going to be at this point, he's still a little bit small to be anything other than just a pass rush specialist. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you can do that at a high level,
Something that IU needs is a pass rush.
yes. Yeah, if you can do that at a high level, it solves a big problem.
Yep.
So he's a guy to keep an eye on. I think Landino is able to move around a little bit more, but more of an edge guy. One player that we get asked about a lot is DePape. Um, and honestly, we probably get asked about um, Andrew more than we do William, um, which is interesting. Andrew came in as a transfer from Michigan State, a former four-star recruit, got injured before the season, and he was a walk-on, which was interesting. His brother, a unheralded three-star recruit, comes in, and he played a little bit, but not much. He redshirts. So both of them, does one of those guys, are they able to step up and be a part of the rotation? To Darius Collins, um, another
Coming back
player
from
that,
injury.
yep, another player coming back from injury that you don't anticipate is going to contend for a starting spot, but you hope is ready to provide another depth piece, particularly in the middle of the defensive line when you've got to have more than two or three guys you can rely on.
Yeah, and
And
Jamari Monet,
yeah, yeah,
is another guy who needs to step up too. He's been in the program for a couple years, and he's a guy who could step into a depth role too. But he's kind of been missing in action the last couple years.
yeah. And then
But
the final guy that I am interested to see, Tyrone Burris. It would be a surprise if he played more than 4 games. Um, but I don't think it's out of the question that he has like a Daniel Ndukwe type role as a freshman.
yep,
He is in for the spring. We know he's athletic. He is basically that same mold of kind of a 6'4", 6'5" guy with length, that's quicker than he is big at this point. So maybe a special teams type role that you look at developing as a pass rusher 2026 and beyond, but a chance to maybe see some of him here in the spring.
I mean, if he could block two kicks and make an impact like Ndukwe did on special teams, that's a win
All
for
day.
IU.
Yep, take that all day.
Let's move to linebacker, TJ. This is a spot where Aiden Fisher takes up a lot of the talk time. He had a
Sure.
great year last year, leading that defense. Was named All American by some outlets. First team All Big Ten. Is back. However, you lose Jalen Walker,
Right.
who I think people underappreciated how good he was. And you saw
Mhm.
it at IU's Pro Day. He ran a 4.38 40. Super athletic. He had a couple interceptions, a couple pass breakups. Um, Replacing him will not be easy, but it looks like Elijah Hardy is going to be the number one option there with Isaiah Jones behind them. Elijah Hardy is somebody we tagged early last year as like kind of a guy. He came in as a redshirt freshman after going to Navy prep. He's real interesting prospect. Had a big impact in as the third linebacker when they went against 12 personnel, and then was that first linebacker in behind Walker instead of Isaiah Jones later in the year. But yeah, he's a guy who could you would think is athletic enough. He showed the speed. He has the size to be an impact player at that spot. And then Isaiah Jones behind him had his best year as a Hoosier last year, and is big enough to take on Big Ten backers and things to make up kind of for his lack of. I'm not going to say he's unathletic, but his
Right.
lack of. He's not Jalen Walker and he's not Elijah
Comparatively.
Hardy. Yeah, comparatively. So his
Yep.
lack of speed is made up by his toughness and his size to get his nose in there too. And then,
Yeah.
of course, Caden Turner, we're waiting for him to get in the mix as well. And that might be a candidate where, hey, it's year, what is it, 3 now for him? And he really has not seen he has seen his playing time decrease every single year.
Year four.
Year 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Redshirt junior. Yep. Um, so I think you can write Aiden Fisher obviously in permanent marker. He's the green dot player for this defense. He's the leader in the middle of the defense. A lot has been written and said about his relationship with Bryant Haynes and the kind of special bond that they have. Just he really is the extension of the coach on the field.
Literally.
Um, it's a cliche, but in this case, he's the guy getting the calls. He's the guy changing the defense. Um, so I think that part, while it is perhaps cliche, it's true with Aiden Fisher. So he's your leader. He's going to start. It's that second spot. Um, Hardy definitely appears to have the inside track. He's a little bit different player uh, than Jalen Walker, so it'll be kind of interesting to see what adjustments Bryant Haynes makes, not having the quickness and athleticism of Walker out there on the field. Hardy is quick, but I'd be willing to bet he doesn't run a sub 4.40. Um, but Hardy perhaps, has things that he will develop that Walker didn't have. I think it would be fair to say that Hardy, in the minimal time that we have shown, nose for the ball, finds himself around the ball consistently, and he is an absolute thumper. I
Yep.
mean, he wallops guys when he hits you. Um, so maybe a little bit of a different dimension there. Um, I think where it gets interesting is what do you do in those three linebacker sets, which we saw more in the second half of the year than we did the first half, which probably had to do with the opponent, playing against physical teams like Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame required more of those three linebacker sets. But um, is it Isaiah Jones or is it Quentin Clark? Uh, Clark, I don't know this, but based on what we believe, Clark, I think, is probably the most athletic linebacker on the roster now. Um, that might not be the case. I think Hardy and a couple of the freshmen would give him a run for this money, but um, Clark is really athletic. He has the same build as Jalen Walker did. He was injured last year, but was able to come back and practice on the scout team during the second half of the season, and then especially in bowl prep. And we heard the coaching staff really liked the work that he put in.
Yep.
Um, if that continued through this brief off season into the spring, I think that there's a lot to be excited about there with Clark. So do you go with Hardy, Clark, Fisher, or is it Fisher, Hardy, and Jones? Don't know, but I think they feel probably good about those four, right? I think that that's certainly the top three, and then Clark, if he's at number four, I think he has the physical tools that you feel good about. Uh, Beyond that is where it does get a little bit iffy
A
with
quick
Caden
question.
Turner. Yeah,
Do they have more depth at linebacker than last year? Now, I know Jalen Walker's there, but
I think they do
I the
because
top,
because you feel
the,
better about Isaiah Jones now than you did before last season when you
sa-
thought he was
sa-
probably a transfer candidate, right?
yeah, same with
And you
Elijah
feel
Hardy.
better about Hardy than you do. So I think you feel better about, say, 3 to 4 guys, when last year I think they probably only felt good about two going into the spring. Um, so I think they have more depth at linebacker, but I still think it is a potential concern, particularly after those four. Do you trust Caden Turner to contribute? Don't know. This is year four in the program, and thus far we've seen nothing. That doesn't mean he can't do it. We just haven't seen it yet at all. Um, any of the freshmen, unlikely. Um, Elijah Hardy was a special case given he had a year at Naval Prep Academy, which I think would more approximate a redshirt year, at IU. So I think he really did enter as a more seasoned guy than just your typical freshman. Um, so with Jamari Farmer, PJ Nelson, um, Amari Kamara, I don't expect them to play more than 4 games. I think they're going to redshirt. So you're looking at Turner, Jeff Utzinger, he's a walk on. So I think that's where you look at that.
He made a lot of plays on special teams
He
last
did.
year.
He did. So maybe you can trust him to step in as an emergency situation. But I think that kind of after those first four is where you might look at, do we take a look in the transfer portal after the spring and address that with the depth piece at linebacker?
Yep, they've got at least one spot open
They do.
if not more. So you that's one of the things about spring practice. You look at what you got.
Yeah.
Portal's going to open.
Yeah.
Let's go get the reinforcements that we need. But yeah, linebacker. Even though you lose Jalen Walker, you probably feel better about the depth in that room than you did last year. Which brings us to, speaking of depth and talent, I'm going to lump the secondary together as a position rank. This might be the best position group on the team.
Yeah.
It might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got an All-American and D'Angelo Pons at corner. You're bringing in an All ACC safety in Devin Boykin. Amari Farrow was great last year. Lou Moore, when he played at IU was really good. Rylan Gandy on the other side at Pitt, like you've got, this is the most talented IU secondary that they've had in a long time, and this includes the secondary with Tyler Mullen and those guys. I would put it above them because it's a little bit more proven. But let's start with the safety and rover positions. You're going to have Amari Farrell and Devin Boykin at safety, at the two starting safeties. You're going to move Lou Moore to that rover position where he was really good at in that Husky position or whatever position they called it under Tom Allen. And he should be a natural fit there. At corner, D'Angelo Pons has one side. I think Ryan Gandy is going to win that battle. This starting the second corner, you have Amari Knighton coming in from NIU, who I think can either be that slot corner in multiple wide receiver sets or push Gandy for a starting spot. You saw him play against Notre Dame last year at the game sealing interception. Played good ball for NIU, and then the depth you get a couple guys back from injury as well. And it's just a room that has talent, it has depth, and it has proven depth that you could. I mean, you feel comfortable putting a lot of guys out, and you have probably the best freshman coming in and Byron Baldwin
Mhm.
coming in at safety. So it's there's a lot to like about this secondary room. Let's start. Let's start with the corners, TJ.
Yeah. D'Angelo Pons, obviously the headliner, no questions. You write him down in marker and he's starting and you feel really good about your matchup against whoever he's going up against. He was hyped up before the season and then he exceeded the hype. You almost never see that where a guy is gets talked up so much during the off season and then he just does better than what that even was. Um, I agree with you, Gandy. I'm going to start on the other side. You look last year, that was Jameer Johnson. Is Gandy better than Jameer Johnson on paper? I think so. He's more proven at the power conference level, but comparable. I think that's fair to say. Comparable. Amarian Knighton seems like an ideal slot corner. He's played that position. He's very comfortable with that position, and he performed really well, graded out extremely well in PFF. And then, you're talking about Jamari Sharp, who's a very talented player with a lot of experience as your fourth corner. That's really good. It's a really good group. They've got a few guys coming in that I know they feel really good about too. Redshirt freshman Dontre Henderson that they had a belief in, uh, with him coming out of high school that they continued recruiting him after had him at JMU as a part of that class. So um, I think that there's just a general belief from me that that cornerback room is really good at the top and then really good with depth and development with guys that I think in the past would be forced to step into roles, but now you don't need them. They get to be redshirt guys. Some of these freshmen that are coming in, they would have been contending for playing time or starting in the not distant past because they're some of the higher rated recruits in the class. They've got the measurables you look for as guys with length. One player that I'm interested to see what happens is Jaja Boyd. Um, he was, as talked about as almost anybody in that incoming recruiting class. We didn't see him last year, and he's a tweener. Where are they gonna slide him in, and what role is he going to get a chance to excel at?
Yeah, I mean, it's just you have so much depth, and even though it needs to be developed, you have
Yeah,
time to develop them now. With that, with all of that, and then you have a redshirt senior Bryson Bonds who, if somebody's not ready, could step in. He played really well down the stretch last year. Jamari Sharp is
sure.
back. Then you've got some good special teams guys like Clay Connor, uh, played well. Reese Balin played well on special teams, and then you're buying time for these freshmen to get developed. Keontae Stewart Jr. is another highly regarded guy. Jalen Bell, another guy coming in as a true freshman. You could start seeing them being able to balance the roster, uh, and now you have a good group of freshmen, redshirt freshmen. You poured in all those reinforcements in the upper class with the portal, and this. So it's why I say the secondary is probably the most talented position group on the team, and it is so close between corners and safeties and rovers that I'm just going to group them into one because
Yeah.
it's 1A and 1B
A lot
with
of
them.
versatile guys too. A lot of
Yeah, I
versatile
mean,
guys.
you could put if somebody goes down, Lou Moore could play safety. Amari Farrell could step up into that rover position,
Yeah.
where he played some last year. Knighton could play safety. There's just a lot of yeah, you could. I mean, you feel comfortable with a lot of guys in that defensive back room out on the field, and then you look at the schedule and that not these freshmen should be able to get some games
Right.
and snaps in to develop. So this defense, while you're missing some headliners in C.J. West, Jalen Walker, and some other guys, but man, you bring your three All-Americans back, this defense might be better than last year.
Yeah. There's the potential for that to be the case. Certainly a few holes to be filled that are going to be difficult, but it seems like it can be it's certainly a retooling, not a rebuilding. Um, and the retooling is being done with more depth than what you entered spring with last year. Um, and it's being done with, I think, more overall talent than what you had last year. The question is, can you replace the athleticism and explosiveness of Jalen Walker? And can you replace that disruptiveness of CJ West?
Yeah,
Um, those are the two questions that they have to find answers for this spring, and that can be done through personnel, that can be done through scheme to an extent. Um, I feel like the pieces are there for them to get to that level again in 2025. Don't know if the run defense is gonna, reproduce the top ranked run defense in the country. That's an incredibly, high bar to reach. Um, but I think they can get, close on that, and maybe you get a few more turnovers here and there to make up whatever difference you've got in the run defense numbers. But it's a really good group. IU administration invested heavily in keeping Bryant Haynes at Indiana.
yep,
Certainly multiple jobs that he got linked with that were concerning. Penn State being the primary one that we heard about, and Ohio State as well, um, as a result of Jim Knowles leaving Ohio State. So it was kind of like, oh, we dodged one bullet, but oh, another one just got loaded in the chamber. Dodged that one too. And by dodge, it was no, Indiana's administration put up a shield, gave Curt Cignetti what he wanted to keep Bryant Haynes on staff. Credit where it's due. That was very well done. And important as a signal of we're not going anywhere as a football program.
yeah.
It's not a one season wonder.
Let's quickly talk about special teams. You lose Miles Price as punt returner, which I think is a big loss. He was very aggressive as a punt returner and helped seal the game against Washington.
Yeah.
And then Keyshawn Williams, who stepped in for him against Michigan, had a big punt return to set up that field goal by Nico Radicic. To seal that game, make it 15-10 instead of 12, whatever, or what it was, 20-15 instead of 17-15 with a few minutes to go. So you have some options there, and I think you'll do well with maybe Tyler Morris steps in, maybe one of
Yeah.
these other
Most likely.
transfer steps in there as well. You lose James Evans, who after last year, people are like, okay, great. And you're bringing in a kicker who looks like he's a computer generated guy on your 10th season of
Right.
NCAA football. But it's he's been in big games. coming from UCF. He's punted under pressure where it seems that James Evans last year, when the pressure was at its highest against Ohio State and then against Notre Dame, just didn't perform well. And maybe it was because he didn't really get the punt in the beginning of the year because IU's offense was so good. But you're not going to say, hey, we need our punter to get work. If you're scoring touchdowns instead of punting, you're not going to complain about it. It's like the people in baseball complain about hitting home runs instead of singles. But then you bring back Nico Radicic as well,
Yeah.
who is what 69 for 69 or 66 for 66 on extra points. Was 10 of 11 on field goals. The only one he missed was on slippery conditions against Purdue. His legs should get stronger with another year. And, again, if you're scoring touchdowns, you're not kicking field goals, but they trust him to make those kicks. Mitch McCarthy is the punter. That name escaped me. But, 6'6", 6'5", 230, he could punt. And then you replace Derek McCormick, who as the kickoff guy who was throwing up monster weight at the combine, or not at the combine, at Pro Day.
Yeah.
Quinn Warren's on the roster. He took over. You bring in Bryce Taylor. He might get that look, but Brendan Frankie, redshirt senior. Look, IU had, 3 injuries to their kickoff specialists before the UCLA game. It was really odd. So you might be able to see all of them. But Quinn Warren stepped in, did a really good job. And then Frankie has been all over the place. He started at Nebraska. He's coming in from where is he coming in from? Texas State.
Yep.
This time, and then he was at Georgia Southern. So special teams has some new faces, and we all know how important it is. But there's some pretty good faces in there as well.
I don't see any reason for concern. Mitch McCarthy, I think I said that wrong, didn't I? We're gonna have to get this guy right. I did, Mitch McCarthy. Yeah. You're right. He's 6'5". I mean, 230, I think. Like he's big. He's former Australian rules football player that went to UCF as part of the pro kick program, as all punters seem to now. But he is on the big end for sure. I don't see any concern with special teams. I think the biggest thing we're going to have to see is, does IU have a punt returner capable of doing more than just calling for a fair catch? A lot of programs have that. Indiana, you mentioned it, they had Miles Price, and he made a difference on a couple of occasions. So that's what you're looking for, is do you have that guy that can, in those margins, make a difference a couple of times with a key return? We don't know. Time's going to tell on that. I do think it's going to be Tyler Morris that gets the first crack at it. That would be my assumption. So, but no real reason for concern with the special teams unit. You do return your long snapper as well. So that operation should continue to run smoothly. It seems like a solid unit that you hope for more of the same in 2025.
The only head scratcher on special teams is kickoff return. You bring back Solomon Van Horst,
That's
but
true.
even with him last year, I think they returned 5 total kicks.
Yeah.
Even
when teams were almost daring him to.
Yeah, they either fair caught it or let it go in the end zone. I mean, that number can't get much lower, so I expect it to go up. But that's something to watch. They're not going to do it in spring practice because it's such a dangerous play. But it is something to watch as the season goes on. Are they going to allow Van Horst or whoever they put back there return kicks and make a difference that way too? Or are they just so comfortable with the offense? Hey, let's just get the ball at 25 and we can march down 75 yards and shove it down their throat like we did last year. But we'll see. It would be nice to get the ball around the 50 sometimes, but it is a high risk play, and IU did not roll the dice very often on kick return last year. One last bit of news before we get TJ out of here, and the spring game is shifted from April 19th, Saturday, April 19th, to Thursday, April 17th at 8 p.m. I am going to go out on a limb and say that move was made for television reasons,
Yeah.
even though no TV has been announced. It is, what is it, the Holy Week? I don't know. I'm Jewish. It's what, Palm Thursday? Something like that. Um,
Well,
Before Good Friday and
Palm
Easter
Sunday, but
weekend. Palm Sunday.
yeah,
Give me a break. It's Easter Sunday, Good Friday weekend, and
right.
all that stuff. So that has been moved from Saturday at noon to the Thursday, the 17th at 8.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have good weather, but it is for TV. It should be good exposure for IU on whatever
Hmm.
network they're going to be on. And
Big Ten, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But
Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. You can check back to HoosierHuddle.com. We have all our previews coming up. Uh, Linebacker just posted today. We'll have updates from spring practice. Today we number 2. Nick Gonzalez is down for us. You follow us on Twitter at Hoosier_Huddle. On Blue Sky, it's HoosierHuddle.bsky. And then follow us on Facebook as well. Have a great evening. Thanks for listening and enjoy the warm weather here in Indiana. It's only going to last a week.